Welcome back to Literature Guide. Today's video is about Shakespearean problem plays. The term problem play has been employed by F.S. Boas in his work Shakespeare and His Predecessors in 1896. While studying these four plays, namely All's Well That Ends Well, Measure for Measure, Troilus and Cressida, and Hamlet, scholars and critics found it very difficult to determine the nature, themes, and plot of these plays. Some critics have also added Shakespeare's Roman play Julius Caesar in this group of problem plays. Why there was a major shift in the dramatist's mood from gaiety to gloom, nobody knows, but it is said that it might be because of the death of his only son in 1596 and his father in 1601. The readers can find darkness, gloom, and mental anxiety in his four plays. Shakespeare's play Troilus and Cressida has been called as a comedy, a tragedy, a history, and a satire. Hamlet has been included in this group of problem plays on psychological basis. I have already produced many videos on English drama. You can watch all the videos such as Shakespearean tragedy, comedy, romance, and tragicomedy if you visit my channel. If you really like the videos produced by this channel, do like and subscribe Literature Guide so that this channel will continue producing useful videos for you in future also. I don't want to waste your time. Let's dive into the video and enjoy the video.
Shakespearean problem plays. The term Shakespearean problem play has been applied to a group of four plays of William Shakespeare composed in the first decade of the 17th century in studies of Shakespeare. They are All's Well That Ends Well, Measure for Measure, Troilus and Cressida, and Hamlet. Frederick S. Boas has employed the term problem plays in relation to four major plays of William Shakespeare in his book Shakespeare and His Predecessors in 1896. These three plays contain dark and somber background along with the great tragedy Hamlet, which links these comedies to Shakespeare's later plays. These plays cannot be strictly called comedies or tragedies, so they have been called as Shakespeare's problem plays. Shakespeare's problem plays are pregnant with ambiguous and complex tone which reflect shift in the dramatist's mood from gaiety to gloom and mental anguish. The term problem play has also been applied to the plays dealing with social problems such as women rights, prostitution, unemployment, prison conditions, etc. Frederick S. Boas has borrowed the term problem play from the type of drama which was in vogue at his time. It was mainly associated to the famous Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen and in English to the writings of George Bernard Shaw. In the modern problem plays of Henrik Ibsen and Shaw, the problems faced by the protagonist have been presented as an example of a contemporary society. The term problem play is also employed in relation to the subject matter of the play, or to a classification issue with the plays themselves. The idea of a problem play is vague and indefinite, so many critics have paid a little attention to the term. William Shakespeare's plays All's Well That Ends Well, Measure for Measure, and Troilus and Cressida examine detestable and vile traits of human nature and in which resolution of the plot seems problematic to the readers. Though the plot outwardly solves the issues raised in them, it does not solve the moral issues in the play. During the first decade of the 17th century, there was a major shift in Shakespeare's dramatic career. He produced fantastic and charming comedies and historical plays tinged with comedy in 1601. William Shakespeare also handled historical matter with tragic setting at once. His comedies put on a grim and somber garb of dramatic satire. These plays are wrapped in dark, somber and bleak atmosphere. At that point, Shakespeare was at the acme of his dramatic career. But the exact cause for this sudden shift from gaiety to mental anxiety and disillusionment is not known. It has been conjectured that the sudden change in the poet's mood might be due to the death of his only son in 1596, and the death of his father in 1601. It is also said that the execution of the Earl of Essex and imprisonment of his friend Southampton must have filled Shakespeare's mind with grief and mental anguish. The atmosphere of loss, disillusionment, and grief pervade his plays produced in the first decade of the 17th century. His plays give account of the unbridled passion, weakness, loss, and levity of young men. All these factors can be seen in the four plays, All's Well That Ends Well, Measure for Measure, Troilus and Cressida and Hamlet. It is surprising to find Shakespeare's great tragedy Hamlet in the list of problem plays. It should be noted that Shakespeare's Hamlet is quite similar to the problem plays due to its atmosphere and general temper. All the problem plays of Shakespeare transport the readers to artificial societies which have been infected with some moral disease. The readers are made to hear the muffled cries of pain and suffering in the plays and feel the inner conflict in the characters. The spectators are tossed in the world of excitement, astonishment, and sadness. Shakespeare's comedy All's Well That Ends Well is modelled on Giovanni Boccaccio's tale of Giglietta di Narbona in his famous collection of 100 Tales in the Decameron. This tale of Giglietta di Narbona was translated into English by William Paynter in his famous work Palace of Pleasure. Shakespeare's play All's Well That Ends Well has been tagged as a problem play. It was published in 1623, and called as problem comedy and tragicomedy. In this play Shakespeare has viewed nature and life from the somber standpoint. Though All's Well That Ends Well is modelled on Boccaccio's The Decameron, Shakespeare has spiced the characters with special qualities. He has also introduced a few new characters in the play. The characters of Bertram, Helena, and the King of France are, no doubt, borrowed from Boccaccio, but the characters of Countess of Roussillon, Paroles, Lafou, and the Clown are Shakespeare's own creations. All's Well That Ends Well is now dated 1606-07. Shakespeare's All's Well That Ends Well has a tinge of bitterness, though it is called as a comedy. The play All's Well That Ends Well presents complex ethical dilemmas which need more than simple solution. It has been classed as a problem play, though the complications are outwardly adjusted in the final act of the play. Shakespeare has described the impact of prejudices on the life Bertram and Helena. Samuel Taylor Coleridge has called Helena as the loveliest of Shakespeare's women. Shakespeare's tragicomedy Measure for Measure has also been put under the group of problem play. It was probably composed in 1604 and was published much later in the first folio in 1623. The play Measure for Measure is modelled on Cinthio's tale in Hecatomythe. It was revived into English by George Whetstone in his play Promos and Cassandra in 1578, which is a chief source of Shakespeare's tragicomedy Measure for Measure. It is interesting to note that George Whetstone's play contained 10 acts. Shakespeare's Measure for Measure has been classed as a problem play because of its concern with sexual and political morality and the complications of its plot and themes. Shakespeare's play Measure for Measure is set in Vienna, which has been called as a city of dreadful night. There is no law and order in society, and the city is perishing of inward corruption, and lust has polluted the entire social order. The play Measure for Measure deals with social, administrative and political affairs. It throws much light on Shakespeare's attitude toward the society of his period. The play has been called as a dark comedy, and it presents the thesis of a role of honesty and common sense for good governance. The character of Mariana throws light on the character of Angelo when their relationship is revealed. Shakespeare's Measure for Measure failed to receive appreciation from the critics, including Samuel Taylor Coleridge. The balance between language and thought in his comedies and historical plays is missing in Measure for Measure, which makes the sense obscure. It makes Measure for Measure a problem play which presents sexual and political morality and complexity of plot and themes. Shakespeare has dealt with the themes of mercy and forgiveness with little bitterness of satire. Though the play abounds with good and evil elements, there is no hint of the rule of evil in society. The play Measure for Measure presents deep psychological probing of Angelo. Angelo orders death sentence to Claudio, a young man who has seduced Giulietta and makes her pregnant. Claudio's deep reflections on death sounds like an echo from the soliloquies of Hamlet. They concern with the deepest issues of life and life after death. Shakespeare's play Troilus and Cressida was probably composed in 1602, and it appeared in the quarto of 1609 in 2 editions. The exact date of its composition is still a puzzle for many scholars in Shakespearean chronology. But the difficulties regarding the date of the play are not so important as the problems of its interpretation. The eponymous hero and heroine have little scope in the play than the rivalry between the Trojans and Greek camps. Samuel Taylor Coleridge has aptly remarked, "There is none of Shakespeare's plays harder to characterize." Shakespeare's Troilus and Cressida is highly satirical in treatment of the subject matter, and it implies that things can go like that. It has been labeled as a comedy, a tragedy, a history, and a satire. It seems that the ingredients of all these forms of drama have formed a strange product called Troilus and Cressida. It is comedy of bitterness and disillusionment. Shakespeare has molded the story of Iliad in his own fashion, probably commenting on the decaying, waning glory of the Elizabethan age. Shakespeare must have gone through Geoffrey Chaucer's poem Troilus and Cressida and Robert Henrison's poem The Testament of Cressid. But Shakespeare has transferred history to the decadent period of the late Renaissance, whereas both Chaucer and Henrison have told the tale with medieval backdrop. Shakespeare's Hamlet and Troilus and Cressida reflect on grim realities and diversities of life. Though the diversities of life are scary and terrible, they are not bad. In Troilus and Cressida and Hamlet, the spectators are left to judge their enigmas, and no partial adjustment of problems take place. Some scholars have also included Shakespeare's Roman play Julius Caesar in the group of Shakespearean problem plays. It reflects the inner struggle and conflict in various characters, including the mob in the play. They fought for love, friendship, ambition, and for political goals. This can be seen in the dialogues between Calpurnia and Caesar, Brutus and Cassius, Antony and Octavius, and in the speeches of Antony and Brutus at the end of the play. Shakespeare's problem plays are tinged with serious and cynical tone, and they hint at the dominance of evil in society without being pessimistic. In the problem plays, Shakespeare has keenly observed and recorded the workings of human nature. But he recorded it without subordinating it an overriding theme. The characters of Hamlet, Bertram, Angelo and Troilus clearly reflect Shakespeare's keen interest in varieties and the possibilities of the human nature.
How is the video? I hope you liked the video. I have produced many videos on my channel for the students who have been taking competitive exams such as the NET and SET exams conducted by UGC. You can visit my channel and get the content on my channel. I have already told you that if you really like my videos, do like and subscribe Literature Guide. It gives me some sort of motivation and it encourages me to produce good content for you. So do like and subscribe Literature Guide. You won't lose anything if you subscribe this channel. I will try my level best to produce good content for you in future also. I will meet you soon with a new video on different topic of English literature. Meet you.
Please subscribe Literature Guide.